and welcome to another episode of FooBar. Today we are going to continue with our migration. I did the first episode that it was like an hour and a half of getting this set up, how to migrate the backend, how to migrate the frontend, how to migrate the database into the cloud from your local host or any place you had it into a serverless backend. In this video, I want to walk through the authentication and authorization part. We are going to create an Amazon Cognito user pool, identity pool, and a pool client, and we are going to modify the backend with really minimal changes in order to get this to work, and we are also going to modify the front end for this to work. So this video is part of a longer series of videos. I mentioned that there is a part 1, but there is also a lot of individual videos. This series is broke down into many parts. The first shorter series of videos is explaining each individual problem more in depth. And this part that is now the migration end-to-end is just me coding it. It's something you asked me a lot, that you want to see me end-to-end coding, and that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to edit the least amount of these videos so you get the rawest me doing this thing, and you can see it. So this is all about the development and building the application together, not that much about the individual services and what they do. For that, you have the other videos that are a complementary part. So let's get started. In the previous video, what we have done is we have put this front-end application. We have migrated the front-end application to AWS Amplify. We have a Lambda function that is running the backend, the Node and Express application. And we can see that it's loading different products, and the products are stored in a MongoDB database that is in the MongoDB Atlas. So we have migrated the 3 things basically, but we still have some issues. So for example, if I try to log in, you remember that we have one user created. So if I try to log in here, I can do test@user.com, and then the password was tomate1234, and then I log in. Poof, nothing happens. And what is this? Because we have multiple Lambda functions executing at the same time. So let's open the Lambda, and you can see here we have one function that is the Lambda adapter function, but we have multiple concurrent functions at the same time. Every invocation, either opening a new product or doing a filtering or the login or everything, it's a new invocation in our backend. So let's see here, you can see that you have 16 invocations in the last minutes. So that's basically what I was showing you when I was clicking around and logging. So because the authentication and authorization mechanism is stateful, that means that it's the Lambda, in this case it was the server handling, and now it's a Lambda function. When we log in, other executions of the Lambda functions are not aware of that. So what we are going to do here is to modify a little bit the architecture. I know that part of our migration requirements was not to touch too much the code, but in this case we need to do it. We have a couple of options here. Either we can build it ourselves as a microservice and keep the state there, or then use an existing authentication and authorization service. It can be something like Auth0, or in our case, we are going to use AWS Cognito. So you can find it here. Cognito, it's quite a nice service. It has a great free tier, as you can see, and I have done a video on Cognito. So you can find it in the playlist for this series. There it is. And there I share everything about Cognito. So we are going to use this that allow us to handle the user directory and handle the access control for our users. So after we finish our migration, it will look something like this. The AWS Amplify will connect to Cognito. We will handle the registration and the login directly through Cognito and Amplify. We will use Amplify libraries for that, and there will not be any connection with the Lambda function. And also then we will have, because we don't want to change the code, we will have to do some authentication and authorization in the code. So let's look a little bit at the existing code. So here we have the CDK stack that we started building, and we can open server, we can go to routes, we have the users here, and we have some interesting routes. So we have logout, login, register, and auth. So logout and login are going to be handled by Amplify. So this one can be really removed from our backend code, and we will remove it in a moment. Then the registration one we are going to keep because again, I don't want to change too much the code. So what I will be doing, the changes that we are going to do here is to register a user to Cognito and then send the same information to our backend, because our logic is then using this user information in different parts of the application to make sure that the purchases are correct and things like that. And I don't want to change too much the code. Then I will keep this endpoint as much as possible like it is. So when the user is registered, we register a new user. And then we have this auth endpoint, and this auth endpoint is part of a middleware kind of thing that you will see in many places. So this is the middleware, but we will get there in a moment. But basically, what will happen is that, for example, if we want to do a purchase, the client will make sure that it's authorized to do a purchase, meaning that the user is logged in. And if it's logged in and it's authorized, then it will go and do the purchase. So this route happens a lot, and we will keep it. This is not something that is going away, because again, I don't want to really change the code. I want to keep the code as much as possible. This is something that we can optimize afterwards. So I will keep this endpoint, but this is calling this middleware, as I mentioned you. And this middleware, what it's doing is basically exploring and handling the token. This is an access token, and it's doing it the Mongo way. We are going to basically remove all these, and we are going to use a Cognito access token. We are going to validate that token, and then we are going to find the user in the Cognito repo and keep on doing with that. So you will see that. So that is what we are going to do now. So we are going to start from the front end. We are going to start working on the registration. So let's open the front end app. And for doing a lot of these things, we can run this app locally. So I mentioned you that it's possible. It's important that you have this .m file. And in this .m file that you have configured the function, and that you have configured the region. And these are things that you can get from the environmental variables from Amplify. So if we go to Amplify, we can go to our app, and then here you can see the environmental variables, and you can get those values. So if we do that, then we can run this application locally. So for doing that, we do npm run. Let's close both of these. npm start, sorry. And this will start our front end in the local host. So then we can do all the changes that we want locally, but still is using the Mongo database in the cloud and the Lambda function in the cloud. So this is just a local front end, and this makes it way easier for us to work. So here what we want to do is attach this login and this registration to a Cognito user pool. And we can do that, but the thing is that we need to create the Cognito user pool first. So let's create that Cognito user pool and get it out from the way, and then we can use it. And for doing that, we need again to go to the backend. So it's here. And we are going to create a new stack. So here we have the Cognito stack. Yes. And in this stack, we are going to create all the resources that we need in order to work with Cognito. So we'll have some props. We'll have some imports first. Let's import everything. And then we are going to have some props. In this case, the stage, as we have been working with the other stacks to pass if it's dev. For now, we only have dev. Then we are going to create the Cognito stack. And from here, we are doing 3 exports that you will see later, the user pool client, and the identity pool. If you don't know what are these exports, I recommend you to go and check that Cognito video I mentioned before. And then we are going to start building the stack. The first thing we are going to do is to build the Cognito user pool. So here we have a user pool that allows users to sign up by themselves. Basically, there will be a registration API enabled. Then they can also verify their email by themselves. So you don't need to have admin going and verifying them. So basically they will get an email or an SMS, and then they, in this case, an email, and they can basically validate that the email is correctly. And then in this case, we are going to set the email as the alias, so they will use that as their username. Then we have the user pool client, and this one is just very basic, and it's here. And then we have the identity pool. And in the identity pool, what we are going to do is to allow unauthenticated identities. This means guest users. And then we are linking all the 3 things together, the identity pool with the client ID and with the user pool. So that's good. Later on, we can create different policies to give permissions, but we are not doing that yet. We are doing that in a moment later in the series. So a couple more things we need to do is to create a role. So we are going to create a role first for the unauthenticated users, so the users that have not signed in. So let's create that role, and this role, you will see, doesn't have any policies for now. We will add the policies later, but basically this allows the users that don't have any role to basically get started with Cognito. And then we will do the same for the authenticated users. And we will then close all the brackets, and you will see this with the role later on, with the policies later on. And then finally, we are going to attach these roles to the different parts of Cognito. So you will see here that we are going to do the role attachment to the identity pool, because the identity pool is the one that gives permissions. So we are going to say, hey, for this identity pool, for the authenticated users, use this role. For the unauthenticated users, use this role. And then we are going to map the user pool and the user pool client, and everything goes together. And then we are going to export all those values, and we are done. So this is our Cognito user pool client, and the identity pool. And we will see those, and we can use those later. We will get into more things later on. Then we can basically use them when we are creating the infrastructure. And we have here the new stack, that is the Cognito. And because we will need it in our backend, I will basically do it before our backend. You will see how we use it in a backend in a moment. And also we will need it in our Amplify application. So we can add that into our Amplify already because we will use it right away. So we have here the identity pool, the user pool client, and the user pool ID. And why you're complaining here? No, because we have not imported them. So what we can do is add them into here in our props. They're here and now they should not complain. Good. And then also we need to pass it as environmental variables because that's where we are going to use them. So let's pass them in our Amplify application as environmental variables. And with that said, now we have built our backend stack a little bit better, but we still will need to do some changes. So we have built the Cognito stack with the user pool client, and the identity pool. We have passed those values into Amplify. So now we can do CDK deploy all, and then create the new stack and update Amplify stack. So I see you when this is done. So now this is deployed. We can go to our AWS account and we can make sure that the environmental variables for Amplify shows an identity pool, user pool, and user pool client ID. And if we want, we can go to Cognito and make sure that those have been created. So here you can see the one that I created 2 minutes ago is this one. And then the federated identities, there should be one here. So we're good. Now we can go to the front end and get working there. So let's go to the React app. I already started it. So what we are going to do first thing is to stop it because I want to install first dependency. So let's go to here and see if we have the Amplify dependency. We haven't. So let's install Amplify and UI React that we need, and then we can use them. Then another thing we need to do before we forget is to add those new environmental variables to our Amplify YAML. We don't need them right now, but we will. So they're here, and also now that we are here, we can add them to our environmental local file that we can test. So let's add those and then put the right values in it so we can test locally. So those are important things to do before we start doing things. So let's go to Amplify. Let's get the identity pool, the client ID, and the user pool ID. Good. And then I think now we have the basics, so we can do npm start. I think now it should be fine. Nothing changed, but we are good. So what we want to do is to play a little bit with the register button first, because the register button will allow us to create a new user, and that will make our life easier. So if we have a list of users, like in this case I have test@user.com, we can migrate them to Cognito. That's possible, and we can do that in the console and do a migration of users and create them. But I will start from the point that we will create our first user, because that's a different story. But yes, you can migrate your users from your local registry to Cognito by basically exporting them. So let's see the code and see where we can find that registry button. So we go to source, components, views, navbar, sections. Here's my menu. We can see there is the login, and here is the register. And this is basically opening a registration page that we can go here and see what is in here. So the register user is basically calling something in the action register user. So let's open that. And this user actions is basically our backend. So most of the calls I try when I build this application, that most of the calls to the backend are happening in this user action.js, so our life is easier. And here we have the register user. So the register user for now, it's calling the backend. And as I said, I want to use Cognito, and then I want to call the backend. So in order to call Cognito, what we need to do is first to do some imports. So we are going to start working with Amplify. So I will import Amplify and Authorization. Then I will be configuring Amplify, and then I'm going to configure it. So this is a configuration file. So we don't have it, so we need to create it. So let's do that. And that needs to be rename dot. Wait. Not it's dot rename .js. So this configuration file, what it does, it has the right format for Amplify to understand these environmental variables that either we have in the Amplify YAML or in the .m. So for authentication, we need to do something like this. And this is a structure that you will find in the documentation of Amplify. So this is a JSON that has the identity pool, with the identity pool that we get from the environmental variables, the region, the identity pool region, the user pool ID, and the web. And you can see that everything comes from that environmental variables. So that's our configuration for Amplify. So we import Amplify. We then configure it from that file, that file gets populated with the environmental variables. So for now, it looks good. So let's go back to our registration. So what will happen now when we want to register a user? So what we want is to call the auth and then sign up. So this is how our user is registered. And then we want to pass some parameters in this registration. So these are the parameters that I want to pass. The username is the email, as I said, the alias when I was creating the user pool configuration. The password is the password. The attributes are email, name, and family name. These are things that are in our registration. So if we go here to register, you can see name, last name, email, password, and confirm. So those are things that we want to pass. This is a promise, and we will need that promise later, as we are doing here, const request. So we are going to put this inside the promise. So I'm going to make it like this. And then basically this we call the sign up, and then we get a user back. And then inside this user, we can call the backend. This is calling the registration, and then we can return this to be successful, because this is what the existing thing waits for. And then we are done. So this should create a user in our backend and also in Cognito. So that's good. We can try it. And because we are running this locally, this should build the whole app, and we can try it right away. So let's refresh this, and let's open the networking. And for this, I will use an existing email because I need to validate the user. So I will put this. Oh, let's do that. My name is Marcia. And then my password will be something very safe. Oh, I need to have a special character. I need to have an uppercase. Now this testing has become very complex. So I should receive an email here, and then we can confirm this. But we cannot confirm this because we don't have a confirmation page. So that's something we need to do. We can remove that validation. Yes, we can. That's not necessary if we don't want to modify the code. But I think it's a good practice. Nowadays, everybody has this confirmation either by text message or by email to make sure that you are not registering users that you don't care. And we can check here in the Cognito. We should have a user that is not validated. So let's go to the one that is being created 12 minutes ago. And here is the user. And it says that is unconfirmed. And we should have got the email, but we don't have anywhere to put that information. So I will delete this user, but I can't. So that's good. I will need to live with this user for now. Let's see if I can delete it from here. Yes. Need to disable it, and then I need to delete it. So disable, and then delete. And let's type this thing. So what we are going to do now is to create the confirmation page, and then we can do the whole flow. So let's go back to the code. And we have here in the registration page, when we do the register user, we go to login. So what we want to do now is that here goes to confirm. So let's create a new page here. Views. Let's create a folder and let's call it confirm user page. And in here, I will bring the piece of code because if not, that can be hours. So basically here we are going to confirm the user. There is some validation down there, and you can enter the email that you used for registering, and then you can enter the verification code. So basically we are going to confirm the user, and that will handle the submit, and then basically we have this on submit. On submit there should be some kind of thing here that is confirming the new user, and that should go to the login page, and this confirm should create a new action. So let's create that action, and then we can continue. So I added here the confirm new user, and what this does is use the amplify library, and it confirms the email and the code, and then it sends a results through, and it confirms the user. And let's go to register page, and let's change this to confirm. And then we need to add it here, and then we need to add it in the app.js. Here we need to create the new confirm page. We need to bring it here, and we need to then bring it here as well. So we bring the confirm, and then basically we are bringing it here. It doesn't need to be authenticated. This is middleware. We are going to change it in a moment. But I think with this, now we are ready to test. Let's make sure that everything is compiled. Yes, and let's try it again. Let's go to register. Let's try again. Marcia, test, FooBar, blog, +1 at gmail.com, and then I will try here with 2 because I think I already have that one. Now we have the confirmation page. So you should receive an email in your account, and that should have a number. So let's check that. So you see I got in that email many verification codes every time I did it wrong or was not confirmed, but this is the last one. So I will just copy that and put it here, and then I will do FooBar blog +2 gmail.com, and we can see here in our user pool that let's refresh. there is the number 2, that is the one we want to confirm. This is the one that I have done wrongly. And let's go here and let's confirm it. And now it should be confirmed and the status is confirmed. And now we should be able to log in, but we can't because the login is attached to the backend. Also, we should be able to see in Mongo that we have that user created. So let's go and check that in our Mongo cluster. So we are in the cluster, now we can check the users in the collection and we should have 2. So here we have, oh, where are my users here? So this is the one that is not validated yet, and then this one is the one that is validated. So here is the user. So they have been created, and you can see that there is a name, there is the email. Ooh, I don't know what I touched. And we have that information as well here. So that's good. Now we are ready to start working on the login page. So the login page is more of the same. So if we go here to the login page, we can see that the login user is using that action. So we don't need to change this. We just go to the action and we go for the login action that is here. And the login action is using the backend. So now we want to really change not to use the backend at all. We want to use Cognito. So I can basically remove this and then write it again. So we do const request and then we do auth.sign-in. And here we want to pass the username. That is the data to submit.email. And then the password. Oh, I hate that there is so many things there. Word. That is the data to submit.password. And then, because this is a promise, we get back a user that we can then return login success equal true, because this is what this needs, and then the user ID. So these are 2 things that the frontend needs in order to complete this. And now we should be able to log in. So let's go and try. Where is our local host here? Let's refresh just to make sure. And then we do FooBar blog +2. That is the user that we have confirmed. gmail.com, and then we put the password. And boom, we are logged in. The menu is not changed yet, and it doesn't seem that we are logged in. And that's because the middleware is not yet aware that we are logged in. So if we go, for example, to a function here, this add to cart should check if we are logged in or not. And if I press it or something, let's see if it shows us the authentication, not here. Let's see here. Here, auth. So this is calling the authentication, and this is returning is auth false all the time because it's not checking the middleware if we are logged in. So that's something we need to change now. We need to go into the backend and modify this middleware in order to get logged in when we are logged in and logged out when false when we are not logged in. So then when we log in, then the basically registration works and the login works and everything works. Then we can modify also the logout, but now we cannot because we cannot test it. So one thing we can do before moving to the backend is to modify this auth endpoint. So this auth endpoint is basically calling that backend middleware to tell that we are authorized or not. And what is going on here is that it's using a token that is stored in a cookie. And this token is our access token. And we don't have a valid access token anymore because Lambda functions are working with different executions, so all concurrent. This doesn't work. So what we need to do here is to basically get a valid access token that persists for the real login time of the session of this user. And for that, we are going to work with Amplify. Amplify provides us with access tokens, so we can do that. So we can get a valid tokens from the existing session. So let's create a new function, and this function, what we'll do is to I don't need any parameters. It will return the auth current session from Amplify. So if there is an existing session, then we are going to get the tokens from here. Token, let's create a constant token, and these I'll do rest get access token. And then we are going to get the JWT token from the token. And then we are going to create a configuration header. That is where we are going to have this authorization that we then are going to pass to all the endpoints that are looking for this access token. So headers. And this will have the authorization, and it will have the bearer. JWT token, and this we can return it. And basically now when we invoke this get authorization header, it will get the token and it will put it in the header of Axios requests, in an HTTP request. So what we can do now is go to this auth method again. That is somewhere here. And what we can do is first get this authorization header. And then with this configuration, we can do the call to the backend. And the call to the backend then now will have the right authorization access tokens in place. So, what is this return? We need to remove this. So this will help us when we try this middle layer that it has the authorization token. So this is good. This is what we need in order to change the backend now. So let's go to the backend and do the changes. So I said that in the backend, what we are going to change is the middleware. So let's go to the backend app, server, routes, and then users. Basically, from the users, we can already remove the login because we have replaced that one. And then we have the auth here. And the auth is basically exactly the same here. We are not going to change that. We are just going to go to that middle layer, middleware. And here we are going to do a lot of changes. So for doing changes here, we are going to work with the AWS SDK. So we can grab that token, access token that we are going to get in the requests, in the headers. Then we are going to get that token and we are going to get the Cognito user from that token. And then we are basically getting from the token, then we are going to the database and doing this find of the user in the user database. So then we don't need to change the code that much. So it's basically just this file. So in order to do this, we need quite a lot of things. So we are going to use a library, open source component that I like it here, that is called the AWS JWT Verify. So this is a library that basically allows us to verify if a token is signed with Amazon Cognito. And we can basically make sure that the token is a valid token. We give the user pool the client ID, and then poof, it tells us that it's good. So then we can move on to the next step. So then, because of that, one thing we need to have is the user pool ID and the client ID. And we are getting those from the main application. So that's something we need to pass to this backend. So now in our backend, when we are defining the backend app, we are just passing the region. So now we need to start passing the user pool ID and the user pool client in order to build this. So we can start from there. And let's pass those ones here, and we need them in our properties as well. And we need them in our, when we define the stack as well. So here. Hop. So now when we deploy this, it will pass the user pool client and the user pool ID that then later on we can use in our backend application. So that's good. So we can then deploy that. And we need to also change our configuration. So we have in prod, we have done, then we have the Mongo URI, we have the stage, and we also need to get the user pool and user pool client. So this is kind of handy, so we then just call it from the environment, from the configuration file, and we don't need to load it. And also this allows us in dev to have these ones defined here as well. So I will modify a little bit my dev.js so we can test this locally, because in this way I don't need to deploy the application in order to make sure that it's doing what it needs to do. And then we are going to deploy everything when it's working. So I will do those changes in dev, and then if we want to test locally, don't forget to do this and change dev. And then we can do cd back, let's clean this. And then we can do cd backend up, npm run backend. And now we should be able to starting locally, and we should get those values. And also, if we want to make sure that we test our backend and our frontend together, but locally, everything locally, what we can do is in our frontend, we can go to our emp and we can basically change this URL to localhost. So we can do localhost 8080, I think is the port that we are using for the back, for the, yes, 8080. And then we can, where is my app? Here, whip. And then we can restart it, and we should be using the localhost as our backend. This is great because now we don't need to test in the cloud. We can do the front end and the backend development locally, and then we are good. So now let's open localhost again. So this is using that one, and everything is loading. And this, if we open, let's see, where is our products by ID, headers, localhost 8080. So this is good. So now we can make sure that our authentication is working locally. So if we go authentication, it's local, and we can make sure that the response is false. So that's good. That is what we want for now. So let's get back to modify our middleware. I know this is a little bit chaotic, but it makes sense when you start doing it all the time. So in our middleware, now what we can do is go back to server, middleware auth. Here is what we want to change. So here, first thing we want to do is to import, make sure that we have import the right AWS SDK modules, because we need that. So we want to import this one. That is the client Cognito identity provider. So that's something we want to import. And then also that that AWS JWT verify that I mentioned, we want to make sure that we have. And do we need some other libraries? Let me think. I don't think so. So we should just reinstall the backend. So let's stop this and run npm run. Let's reinstall to get all the new dependencies for the backend, and then we can do npm run backend again. Good. So now we have the dependencies in our application. So now we are ready to get started changing these things. So first, let's do some imports. So we are going to keep this one, and we are importing on top of that one. So we are going to import the Cognito module from the AWS SDK that will allow us to do some validations. We are going to configure it. Then we are going to import the Cognito JWT verifier, and we are going to have that user. And finally, we are going to import that config file that has the identity pool and the identity pool client in the environmental variables that we will get from here. So we can do that as constants. We can have them here. So that's good. And now we will basically remove everything, or we can put it like this, because we will do a lot of things. The first thing is that we want to get from the header, we want to get the token. So we have the token, and we have it in the authorization header. So that's the first thing. Then we already do that, so we can remove it. And then we can want to get the JWT token. So we are going to replace, to find that token from the bearer. So this one says bearer and the token, and we want to basically change that and get just the JWT token. The next thing we want to do is to verify the token. And for that, I will create a new method because it makes it easier. And for that, we are going to use the JWT token verifier. So this verify token will pass the token that we just extracted from the bearer header. And then we are going to do the JWT verifier library, and we are going to pass the user pool, the token access, that is an access token, and the client ID. And then this will tell me if the token is valid or not. And with that, then we can continue, because if the token is valid, nothing else matters. And so that's our first step. So we do that. If it's valid, then let's move on. If not, let's go home. So if it's not valid, then we can go home, and this returns an error. So that's good. If it's valid, we can verify it again. Then what we want to do is to get the Cognito user. And for that, I'm also created a method, because that makes life easier. So we are going to pass the token, and then we are going to use the AWS SDK to get the user based on the valid token. And then that will return us a user, and we will get the user attributes in the position number 3. That's the email, and that's the email that is attached to the MongoDB database. So that's what we are going to do. Next, we are going to get the user. Hop, hop, hop. And then what we want to do is to find the user and do all this. So we need to change a little bit this find user by token, because now we have the email, we don't have the token. So I'm going to go to this kind of model file from Mongoose, and I will modify that method that says find by token, and I will create one that says find by email, because that's what we really want. So let's create that one. And basically now we can do find by email. I pass the email and pass the callback, and then find the email, and that will return me the user with the email. So it's pretty straightforward. So now what we will do is basically bring everything that is in here into here, but with the right find by email, and then all the right things. So we can just remove this. So at the end of the day, we have not really changed the logic of whatever this is doing. It's doing exactly the same. It's finding a user from the database. It's validating the tokens, and now it's validating it against the Cognito. So let's try this and see how it explodes in our face. Hop. So we are not logged in. So let's see auth. Here it's, or we are, oh, we are, it's remember. So because we logged in, now it has the right thing, because the cookie, the header was in our browser. So that's good. And we cannot log out because we have not created that thing. So maybe we should do that next, so we can make sure that everything is working. So let's go to the front end. Where is my front end? Here. And we can change the logout version of this, so we can use the amplify mode. So now we are using this thing, and we want to use the amplify. So no more calling the backend. Oh, now we are using auth, sign out, and then poof, everything should be good. So let's try again. Let's refresh. We are authenticated. That's good. Let's log out. Now we are logged out. If we go here, let's find an auth call. Where it's one. When you need an auth call, you cannot find an auth call because all these things are for unauthenticated users. So let's see. Well, this is good that it's not doing any auth call. Let's log in. FooBar blog. And now let's log in. And now we should be authenticated. Yes. We are, and we can see different menu. We should be able to do purchases. Hola. So these are not working still. So let's fix that. So what is going on here, that when we do a purchase, nothing is happening, even though we are logged in and things look very good? Well, it's a very simple explanation in our front end. So let's look at one of those endpoints that require to be authenticated, like the add something on buy, for example. So this is the method that should be done when we purchase something, or when I want to see my cart, we should use this one, get cart items. And all of these are authenticated. So how we know that? If we go to our app page, that is the main page, in our React application, we can see here a little middleware that is called auth, and then the name of the page, and then it says null or false. If we go to something like upload product page, it says true. If we go to cart page, it's true. If we go to history page, it says true. This means that it will it needs to be authenticated in order to move in. And now you say, well, but we have fixed the authentication thing, and that's true. But the thing with this is that we are not passing the right header. So we have passed it into our authentication, that we have got the authentication header and we pass it here. So if we go to here and we look for an authenticated call, we can see in the headers the authentication somewhere. Here it is, authorization, sorry, and you can see the token. But if I go to history, for example, let's check it, then we can see the get history, it's broken and we don't have anything in the token and it needs that token. So this is a very simple change that we need to do in all the methods that requires that token. So basically the methods that are buy, get cart items, and so on and so forth. So for example, let's change the history and we can see it working, and then you can change all the others that are failing. So let's go to history, here, get history. What we need to do is the same that we have done, const request get authorization header, and this will get the right token for our authenticated user, and then we can put it in the header, and then we can do the call. So we can do here return Axios and put this one inside here, and then this will basically return the right thing. Sometimes you might need to do some changes because the response is not exactly the same what the application is expecting. So when you do these changes, but in this case, we just fix the response object to point to the right place, and it should be done. So now the get history should work. So let's refresh that and let's see. And when you do that, don't forget to pass that config. So here we need to pass that header and it should do now the thing. So let's check if this works, and we can see now the get history, it's 200. We don't have any history with this user, and the authorization is good. So let's change everything that requires this authorization header, and let's move to the next problem. So now, after all the changes are done, we can add something to the cart. We should see that it's added. We should be able to remove it from the cart. We should be able to add it again. We should be able to purchase it. So if we go to history, we can see the history. If we go to home, then everything now it's working. We can log out, we can log in, we can see things. So this is kind of the authentication part. So what is missing is for the next video is this part. So let's see, let me show you before we move on. Oops. I needed to show you what happened. So the part that is not working is the upload. So here when we cannot upload images as these images are stored in our Lambda function. So in the next video, we are going to fix that. For now, we have done the authentication mechanisms and everything. It's done by Cognito, and it works locally. So before we get out from this video, we are going to publish everything and get everything working in the cloud. So the first thing we want to do is to basically merge, create a commit and put all these changes from the front end in the cloud. So the Amplify YAML and all the libraries that we imported, the config file, and all the changes that we have done to the code in order for this to work. So let's put that and let's commit it. And this will trigger a build of Amplify app. And then in our backend, we need as well to push this. So we have done changes in the backend, so we need to deploy that. And let's do that. So let's stop that. Oh, and don't forget in the server to go to config, to key, and put prod here. So it works. I always forget that. And then let's go to deploy CDK, deploy all. So when everything is in the cloud and it's there, the backend and the front end, I come back and I show you things. Okay, so the front end, the back end, everything seems to be deployed. Let's see. We are getting our products from the right URL. Now we should see, we should log in. Let's close that. Now we are logged in, we have something in our cart. We can purchase, hop. We can go to history, you can see we have some purchases. I think we have bought this one. No, we have bought this one. Yes, sold one, so that's good. And we can log out. And this is what we have done today. And in the next video, we fix the storage. So I see you in the next one.